totally wrong. He wrote a story that was wrong. The information he was given was wrong. This was what we call in the industry an omnishambles, an utter cock-up from start to finish. Welcome to Beebwatch. I'm Kevin O'Sullivan, and if you're a BBC staffer, I'd close your eyes and put your hands over your ears right now, because this is the show in which I put the state broadcaster under the microscope and take a long, hard look at this week's scandals, gaffes, and downright nonsense. And remember, I'm watching the BBC, so you don't have to. Let's talk about Nigel Farage. It has been 3 weeks since the BBC's business editor Simon Jack wrote that the reason Farage's bank accounts were being closed down by Coutts, the top people's bank, were purely financial. This was not true. It was 100% wrong. His bank accounts were closed down because of his political opinions, being right of centre, and of course his stance on Brexit, which Coutts decided in secret meetings was not compatible with its purpose or values. That was the reason it was closed down. The BBC told licence fee payers something completely different, something completely wrong. It took them 3 weeks to finally admit that they got it wrong and to finally apologise to Nigel Farage. And that apology was mealy-mouthed, to say the least. Simon Jack talks about, we got our reporting wrong. What do you mean we and our? Simon, it's your reporting. There was no one else involved. He also says he based his information on a trusted source. So he got the information from one source and then just faithfully regurgitated it. He said then, oh, well, the only mistake we really made was in the headline, we should have said, a source told the BBC. Well, that, Simon, is not how journalism goes. You can't just justify any story because someone told it to you. So somebody could tell you an absolute pack of lies and you say it's okay to write this story because a source told the BBC. It's not okay to do that. That's why you've had to admit you were totally wrong, and that's why you've had to apologise. The BBC's reticence to say sorry on this issue is an utter scandal, an utter scandal. When it dawned on Mr. Jack and the BBC that the senior source familiar with the matter may well have fed them a crock, a total pile of rubbish, instead of saying, oh my God, we've got this story wrong, it says, we have since changed the headline and the copy on the original online article. Well, thanks very much, because the online article was totally wrong. I would have thought you might have changed it. They then go on, incredibly, to say that they did this because they came to recognise that the story had changed. It hadn't changed. It was still wrong. Totally wrong. He wrote a story that was wrong. The information he was given was wrong. He fed the BBC licence payers a story that was wrong. When you do that, you have to say sorry. And you don't then start talking about, oh, well, the story changed. Oh, well, a source told me. This was what we call in the industry an omnishambles, an utter cock-up from start to finish, and the BBC taking 3 weeks to admit it got something totally wrong, something for which actually, if he wanted to, Nigel Farage could sue them for, but has good-heartedly accepted the apology and pointed out that it's very rare for the BBC to say sorry for anything. But they ran with this story and then they stuck by it for 3 weeks. They've got to look at themselves and ask themselves, is this the kind of journalism that the BBC is renowned for? Because the BBC is supposed to have a bond of trust with its audience, that they deliver fair and impartial journalism, and when they got it wrong, they say so. Well, what they've done here is they've, in my view, published completely biased journalism and not fair and totally wrong, and to take 3 weeks to concede that, to admit that and say sorry, is a disgrace. Meanwhile, talking of reporting dubious information, the BBC's fanatical climate editor, Justin Rowlett, has been flying all over Europe, destroying the planet on gas-guzzling jets. Although he's not admitting that. He's recently got back from a planet-ruining trip to Alicante, 1,800 miles. Because of that journey, he spewed into the atmosphere nearly half a tonne of carbon emissions. When he got there, it was actually 27 degrees, which isn't that unusual for this time of year in that part of Spain. But of course, Justin told us it's going to get hotter, and in Italy, it's really hot, and Greece is on fire. He subsequently tweeted that there's no doubt that this is climate change caused by mankind, and therein lies the rub. Therein lies the reason to ask the state broadcaster the question, why have you got 9 full-time climate journalists all on about 80 grand a year or more? Why is Justin Rowlett flying all over the world, ruining the planet to tell us not to ruin the planet? Why is he telling us not to make plane journeys when he makes them all the time? So lots of journalists have said to the BBC, have asked the BBC, did Justin Rowlett, the climate change warrior, fly to Alicante on a gas-guzzling jet? Guess what? BBC won't tell us. Don't you think they owe us that transparency? Outrageous. Anyway, Justin Rowlett, we don't know whether he got on a plane or not, although we're assuming that since in the morning he was in London and by the afternoon he was in Alicante, we're assuming he didn't go there by bicycle. And when he got back, thank God for Her Majesty's press, they took a photo of him, and on his rucksack, his little boy rucksack, he's 57 years old, grow up, on his rucksack were big Iberia air tickets. So that's the Spanish airline. So I think we can assume that Mr. Rowlett doesn't really care much about the climate when it comes to his own personal jet travel. Another example of rank hypocrisy. This has got to stop. The eyes of the world, of course, are on the Women's World Cup down there in New Zealand and Australia. Enthusiasts can tune in every day. If you turn on your tellies early in the morning, coverage tends to start around about 6:15 in the morning and then carries on until 2:30 in the afternoon. So that's about 8¼ hours every day on ITV and the BBC. Anyway, Morocco has got a great player called Ghislaine Chabbak. Homosexuality is illegal in Morocco, and of course Ghislaine was asked in a press conference by a BBC journalist, were there any gay relationships in the Moroccan team? Have a look at this.
In Morocco, it's illegal to have a gay relationship. Do you have any gay players in your squad, and what's life like for them in Morocco?
Sorry, this is a very political question, so we'll just stick to questions related to football, please.
It's about people. It's
Thank
got
you.
nothing to do with politics. Please let her answer the question.
FIFA is, of course, perfectly entitled to try and impose rules and regulations on the kind of journalism they want surrounding the Women's World Cup. But at the same time, proper journalists have to ask the right questions. And I'm going to defend the BBC here. Perfectly valid question to ask of people playing for their country, are you allowed to have gay relationships in your team? But instead of standing by this valid and justified question, this valid and justified journalistic inquiry, the BBC grovellingly apologised and said it was a totally inappropriate question. Why? Why was it an inappropriate question? I would suggest it was the question that everybody wants answers to. Don't apologise for journalism. We've just been talking about the business editor, Simon Jack, and his version of journalism. Get a story wrong, don't really apologise for it. That's not journalism, not proper journalism anyway. But down there at the Women's World Cup, they try and do a proper bit of journalism, ask the right question, and then they apologise. The BBC apologising for journalism. They took 3 weeks to apologise for getting a story utterly, totally, 100% wrong about Nigel Farage, but they apologise in a second when they ask a Moroccan footballer whether or not there can be gay relationships in that team. Double standards or what? So that's me done for another week on Beebwatch. Let me know what you think in the comments box below. And remember, if you subscribe to TalkTV, I promise you that you won't get cancelled because of your political views. Until next time, I'm jetting off to the Costa del Sol to do a bit of reporting from a sunny beach.